Like my gut feeling as you were telling me details was not a deal for several reasons. It sounds to me like you guys are being hard-headed and just wanted to force the deal to work. And I'm like, why did you pay him that much?
We ask that question every day. So, but to be completely honest, we
Okay.
we didn't know. So we talk a lot about failing forward and really trying to figure out
Yeah.
life by action.
Morby method on deck.
Go
Nick
fight one.
and
Boom, boom,
Mike,
boom.
you guys have done several Morby methods. Let's look at one of them so that people can see, number one, what is a Morby method? How do you get into it? How do you know you've got one? And how do you do it the right way? We can get into how you do it the wrong way on another Zoom.
We have plenty of examples of those as well.
Yep.
Plenty of those examples. So start with the end. You guys close the deal and it's working now?
Ish.
Yeah.
Ish. Ooh,
Yeah.
is it profitable? Is it going to be profitable? What's that
It had
outlook?
no reason that it has nothing to do with it being a Morby why it's not working. It has everything to do with management right now. But
Okay.
that's a different story.
Well, so is that like a
More so
lesson learned in
tenants than
underwriting?
management.
Really?
Yes, 100% lesson learned in underwriting. It was a step that we skipped because we were excited for the possibility of the deal. But
I mean,
we can get into
I know
that.
plenty of people who would lose a little bit of money for the sake of doing a Morby method,
Yep.
and a few people who would lose a lot.
just to put that notch on their belt. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
just
seen
to say they did one. Well, so, okay, so then what underwriting tip can you give us right now about, like, is it poor management causing you, do we need to factor in more holding costs just as a default, as a safety net?
That could definitely be part of it. I think the biggest thing that we all should have as a baseline is making sure you have someone you trust walking through the properties for you. This is a deal
Ooh,
that was, thousands of miles away for both Mike and I, and it was Texas. We both live in the Northeast, not
ew.
something that we continually walk through. We trusted the wholesaler to provide with photos and everything else, and it looked okay from the photos that we were saying. So we thought we knew that work had to be done. We didn't realize the extent, and we found that out after the appraisal. So the appraisal came back with a lot of deferred maintenance, and with that deferred maintenance, we had a contractor walk out, and not even included in the appraisal itself, which caused a question whether they even exist. But there was like rotted floors, termite damage, decks falling apart, things that weren't on any of the marketing or the appraisal itself, just things that were happening at that moment and we're taking photos of at the time when the contractor was walking through, which really put us in a bind because the money that we were going to receive at the end of the Morby that we were really excited about, we were going to keep a little bit back, turned into, okay, now we're just throwing every possible penny into this to bring it up to pro forma.
Ouch. Okay.
Party.
Okay. Well, all right, let's get into the beginning. How did you find the deal?
We created a method of reaching out, doing Lonza method for those of you in sub two with a bunch of wholesalers and doing realtor outreach for major multifamily. And we were looking all across Texas, Florida, and a couple other smaller states that we knew had great returns, but didn't cost a lot of money to get into. We came
So
across.
does that mean you're looking for creative deals where cash already didn't work?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
When we were looking at specifically reaching back out to the deals that were being sent to us for the cash deals that were like, that seems really high for the area, or cash deals that were like, well, this has questionably been on the market for a very long time, or been marketed by the wholesaler for a really long time. Something either wrong with it or that price is way out of whack. So we started a conversation, tried to see if there was a creative solution there. For this specific deal, we found out very early on that the owner had two major liens that were coming due by the end of the year.
So
And this
they
was
had to sell
August
fairly quick.
Yeah. So, well, not quick, but definitely had to sell. And they
And I
had
had to sell for a high down payment. I think the think the liens were just over 300,000. So it wasn't like
On a
the
purchase
10 or
price of
20% down. It was high.
900K.
800,
900K.
900K total.
The
So
original purchase price with the wholesaler though was somewhere around 8 to 850.
825. Yep.
So they
how much
had
did the wholesaler get paid?
a lot, $75,000.
The wholesaler made that?
They were about to make 150, Caleb. And we stepped in.
So why didn't cash work?
Cash didn't work for us, and it didn't work for them because the price that they wanted was way too much. The wholesaler was not negotiable for a lower price. They were forcing us to either take it at 900 or pass it along. We came up with a solution saying, well, if they want a high down payment or if they need a lot of money and we can't do sub 2 or seller finance, why wouldn't it work in this way? So we did not have the ability to afford a cash deal.
I was going to say, from the information available to me right now, it sounds like you guys were determined to make a deal out of that.
No,
Is that
we did not have the ability to make it a cash deal, and the numbers that were suggested on the sheet and all of the underwriting we did had a very high return if we turned it into a creative deal. Does that make sense? Cash
so
itself,
it had high potential in one way, but like you really wanted that deal to work out one way or another.
Oh, 100%. We had
Yeah.
two partners on it that
Were you chasing?
we were with all the Morby deals that we were doing, we were chasing. It was a hard lesson to learn.
Okay.
This one just so happened to work because there was high motivation on the seller side. So
yeah, what is it that makes the difference between somebody chasing it? Like, did you chase and get lucky at the same time on the same deal? Is that basically what happened, or was there enough
Yep.
that? Okay, that's fair. I was going to say, was
That's a
there
good
enough
way to put it.
justification for chasing it?
Yeah, but we got lucky in a few ways. You know, the wholesaler just wanted their commission. They had no other buyers. The
Of
seller
course not.
needed
That's
to
why
sell.
I was like, you guys were like, it sounds to me like you guys were being hard headed and just wanted to force the deal to work because the wholesaler had no other hope either. And I'm like, why did you pay him that much?
we ask that question every day. So, but to be completely honest,
Okay.
we didn't know. So we talk a lot about failing forward and really trying to figure out
Yeah.
life by action, right? And we have done a lot of things over the past 2 years of being part of sub 2 where our action has resulted in not the most favorable solutions for us. And in
Sure.
this position, with this Morby method specifically, it worked out because the motivation was there for the seller to get it done. But in all honesty, it should have been a deal we passed. And it should have been a deal we passed very early, not because of the terms, not because we were chasing. It simply would have been passed on if we had a personal, somebody that we could trust walking the properties. And we would have realized right then and there that this is a deal for us. So regardless of chasing or not, we didn't have a clear picture of what we were walking into from the get-go.
Okay.
I
think there's a lot of deep lessons in the first 5 or 10 minutes of this. Like my gut feeling as you were telling me details was not a deal for several reasons.
But we learned how to make things a deal. Well, not, I shouldn't say make things, how to find a deal from this deal and other deals that we've made mistakes on previously.
Sure.
So chasing has been something that, especially the partnership that we had on this one, which we just put a stop to and we reinvented everything a few months back. That was the goal was not to get a good deal. The goal was to get a deal. Does that make sense?
That's a fair adjustment.
And that for them and for us is not the way you invest in properties. You're getting something under contract isn't the goal. Getting something that has a quality return is the goal. And if we really sat down and understood what creative financing was at its core, is that you have to cancel every other piece out and push away and push away and push away until it comes back to you in a form that makes sense and that you are not, chasing or bending yourself into the deal. The
Yeah.
deal shows up at your feet in the way that it needs to be, adjusted. Small adjustments here or there aren't a big deal, in my opinion, but the big adjustments we had to make this deal work in itself made it not a great deal from
Okay.
start to finish. It will be amazing once pro forma hits, but what we paid for it, how we got through it, how we got to here wasn't the best solution.
I should point out that the appraisal came back at 955 and we wound up paying 9 for it. So
Yeah.
we didn't buy it right at the highest appraised value, and the upside on the work that we're going to do and the rental increase is big. So it's a lot of work to get there, but once we're there, like Nick said, it'll all be worth it.
So you wanted the deal, cash didn't work. You wanted to go creative. Sub 2 and seller finance really didn't work because, well, sub 2, the loans were coming due in short term.
Yep.
Seller finance didn't work because what?
For the same reason. Like, really, we couldn't give her a huge down payment to make it work, for her to pay off the liens. And the whole purpose of her selling this property was to be able to afford those liens that were coming due. So
it was the high down payment that killed it as seller finance.
Yep.
Which automatically makes it a
Morby method.
A bad deal.
The point, people, is that a high down payment does not automatically equal a Morby method.
Yeah.
Now, that it is one of the things you should think of, but it's not automatically Morby method.
And let me preface this by saying that after doing a couple deals at Morby and this being successful, we will never ever do a Morby with a wholesaler in the middle. It doesn't make sense. That the structure of it is very difficult to figure out because you're not structuring it based on the wholesale fee, right? So you have to come to the table with an additional amount of money that may or may not be provided by the lender that's coming to the table, depending on how you write that contract. Number one. Number two,
right? And when you have a wholesaler in the middle, they're the one that wrote the purchase contract.
They not only wrote the purchase contract, but they're conveying everything that they say or that you say to the seller and vice versa, and you really don't know what's true or not. Mike had just had a conversation with the seller a couple weeks ago, and the terms of our seller finance with her were completely misunderstood again. And this is we've already closing 3 months after closing. So
yeah,
it's a messy deal to work with a wholesaler or a realtor, but wholesalers specifically who want control and want to make sure that they're communicating everything to the seller and keeping that distance between you and the seller, it doesn't work.
So what really does make it a Morby method? Go ahead.
To add to that real quick is the wholesaler said they understood what we were trying to do, but they didn't. They wanted to seem big and bad. I get it. It makes total sense. I can explain everything. And they wanted to control the conversation to the point where they wouldn't let us talk to the seller. But towards the end, they were so overwhelmed. They were like, just call the seller. Like,
yeah. If you don't have direct contact with the seller, it ain't no good. So what does, and I'm going to have to jump here in a minute. What does make it a Morby method? There's plenty of things that don't automatically, but what is it that makes something a deal actually a Morby method?
Motivation from the seller and the need to be able to get something creative done, but not accept anything lower than a certain percentage way above what we can afford sub 2 or seller finance. That turned out to be more than 20% of the deal, right?
Yeah.
So if he's looking for 30, 40, 50% down, because it's a need, not a want.
Not a want.
Need.
I understand plenty of sellers want half down. That's not a need. This seller had a need. She had loans coming due. She didn't have any other choice.
Right. So we were able to structure it that way. She was able to move forward in that regard because it was the only solution she had on the table to make it work, and not have to go underwater or file for bankruptcy or whatever else that was coming in her.
You were truly her only solution.
Right. Our structure didn't work well for us. The way that we did it didn't work well for us. We got it across the finish line. It was fantastic that we were able to complete something like this, but in the end, it wasn't the best way forward for us. It didn't make it a great deal just because it was a Morby method,
Right.
but it was a successful Morby method deal because of the motivation from the seller. That's what
Yeah.
it came down. If the
It reminds
seller
me of
was motivated,
reminds me of something I heard about pilots. A pilot instructor said to a young pilot, "You got two bags. One's a bag of luck and one's a bag of skill. You start with a full bag of luck and an empty bag of skill, and you better hope you fill up the skill bag before the luck one runs out." And it's kind of like that with some of these advanced deals.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when it came to the point of us actually trying to make a good deal work, we were blinded by the fact that we could do something like a Morby method here and got really excited about it and didn't look in our blind spots to make sure that we were moving forward correctly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the hardest part about any creative deal that you're doing. Are you making the right decision? But for this specifically, there's so many other components that aren't apparent.
There's a ton of unasked questions. And I think maybe that's where we pick up part two is what are the questions to ask to make sure you're doing a good deal, and what resources can you turn to?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen.